Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Medina, and this is my Drama 15 oral presentation. Today, I will be discussing with you a few elements from one of my favorite plays that I read this semester. The play I'm referring to is Zoot by Luis Valdez. I'll be discussing a few characters, their development and motivation. But before I do, I wanted to mention just like a few fun facts, I guess, about the play and the film. In 1979, it was the first Chicano play, to debut on Broadway. And then in 1981, Mr. Valdez actually directed the film version because the play itself wasn't very successful, but the film was, so that's cool. It made up for itself. The play, as you know, was based on true events and real people. It was based on the Sleepy Lagoon murder trial of 1942. So that's pretty interesting. I liked this play so much that I actually bought it on DVD. So there you go. I really liked it. So the first character I'm going to talk about today is Henry, the leader of the 38th Street Gang. When you're first introduced to Henry, you see that he's pretty much like any other young man of his time, I guess, dressing up in his drapes, hitting the town with his girl, causing trouble with his boys. He's the leader of the 38th Street Gang, quote unquote. But you see he's really not a bad guy, and, he's decided to join the Navy because he wants to make his family proud and fight in the war. He really doesn't want to leave his zoot lifestyle behind, but he knows, it's time to step up and be a man. Unfortunately, he's accused of a crime that he didn't commit, and he's thrown in jail for murder. And after he's sentenced to life in prison, it almost seems like he just gives up, It is what it is, but he soon realizes that, he has people fighting on his side for his freedom, him and his boys' freedom, and that gives him hope. And luckily, they win the appeal and he's released. And, at the end of the play, they give you like 3 endings about what possibly happened to him. And you want to think that the best possible ending happened to this guy, that he got married and had kids and, lived out the rest of his life. But, it's actually, this character is based on Henry Levis, who was actually born in 1923 after many run-ins with the law and his conviction and subsequent release with the Sleepy Lagoon murder trial. He was actually convicted of selling drugs like a few years down the line and sentenced to 10 to 12 years. I'm not really sure how long he actually spent in prison, but he did do some time. But on a good note, in his later years, he cleaned up his act, led a stable life, never got married, never had children, and at the age of 48, he actually died of a heart attack in 1971, so that's too bad. Another character that I wanted to talk about today was, El Pachuco, which was he was the coolest character, I guess, of this play. He served as Henry's alter ego, and the motivation, I guess, would be he was the narrator of the story. I read many sources, about what he actually represented, and a lot of different sources said that he represented the Aztec god, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, so give me a little break on this. But the Aztec god Tezcatlipoca, and while there's many different interpretations of what this god actually represents, I think the most accurate would be that he could be both helpful and destructive, which that kind of makes sense about what El Pachuco was in the play. He either could be helpful and help Henry decide, to do the right thing, or he could be destructive and kind of point him in the wrong direction, So I could see where that, there's a connection there. I actually really loved Edward James Olmos, his portrayal of El Pachuco in the film version, so I just wanted to add that. The next character that I'm going to talk about is Alice Bloomfield. She was a reporter, and she was pretty much a friend of George's, the lawyer, and she really wants to help the guys and feels like, they've been wrongly accused and convicted. She knows about being persecuted, about, she's a Jew and how her background, people judge her about where she comes from and stuff. So she really connects on some sort of level with the guys. And she believes that, Henry's been made to be a patsy for the murder, and she actively works on the guy's legal defense along with their lawyer. As she gets to know them, you see that Alice and Henry, they develop feelings for each other, which only further complicates things for each other, for each of them. And in the end, she pretty much decides that she's going to, back out and let him live his life, that she would just, probably further get in the way of things. Her character is actually based on a real person. Her name was Alice McGrath, who eventually became the executive secretary of the Sleepy Lagoons Defense Committee. She actually kept in contact with Henry and the other guys throughout her life, and she actually passed away in 2009, so she lived a long life. Another character I want to talk about is George Shearer. He was the lawyer who stood up and defended the boys during the trial and their appeal process. At first, the guys didn't trust them. All they see is this white guy, and they're like, well, what can you really do for me? But he gains their confidence and eventually their trust, and, he never stops fighting for the guy's release. And, even though he gets drafted during the appeal process, he never gives up on them, and, creates a lifelong friendship with them. A lasting relationship, I guess. He's actually based on a man named George E. Shibley. He was the son of Syrian immigrants, and he was known for fighting for, the underdog. He actually, in real life, frequently took cases that no one else would take, and none of his clients in his 56-year career ever received a death penalty, so that was an interesting fact that I learned. He actually passed away in 1989. The last character I want to talk about today is the press. It was like, I guess, an interesting character to me because, the press was directly responsible for the defaming headlines, specifically targeting Chicano youth as gang members and criminals and thugs, because of one person's opinion. They totally inflame the public's opinion that all these kids, that were wearing Zoot suits, that were trying to be, trying to fit in and find their own way, were the direct reason that crime was flourishing in Los Angeles, which we knew was to be untrue. This just highlighted how the press highlighted how racial injustice was, fueled directly by the media, and how it contributed to feelings of racial superiority by the Anglos. So, anyways, this was my presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great holiday season, and thank you for watching. Bye.